Good evening, Malaysia and followers from around the world. Tonight, we have with us again the journalist and political analyst Philip Golingai and Ivan Grivel, a columnist and a lawyer. We will talk about the next general election, the GE15. It may seem like a long time away, but it isn't. Discussions between Bersatu, AMNO, and PAS have been very intense, with media reports saying that Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin has asked AMNO to decide whether it wants to contest the general election as part of Perikatan Nasional, and he wants the answer by March 1st. Muhyiddin is said to have told the leaders of Bersatu, PAS, and AMNO that he may even call a general election before August 1st. That's the ultimatum. And of course, there's been a lot of talk, and the UMNO may even partner with the DAP to strike a deal, and that the DAP has not denied, the leaders have not said anything, and that things are brewing right now. The GE, if it happens in August, is actually just a little 5 months away, and we are already coming to March, and a lot of excitement are going on. And tonight we're going to talk about it. Okay, welcome on board, Philip and Ivan. What has been happening on the ground? What is all this intense negotiation that we have been hearing about negotiation for seats, and that Bersatu is losing patience with UMNO, and that the past President Hadi Awang, who tried to be the peacemaker, trying to keep all these three Malay parties together, and he had such a hard time that he actually suffered some heart pressure and had to be admitted to the hospital, according to our sources. That was how intense the negotiations were. So, Ivan, please share with us what have you heard?
Well, it's interesting, Datusri. I think you chose the right topic for the right time because so much has been happening in the last couple of days. Uh, First of all, I think the the grave pine or the political grave pine, the talk is that the Prime Minister is confident enough to have an election not too far away. Of course, many people had put August because the emergency is due to end on the 31st of July. So somehow or other, that felt like that was the timeline. But it could also be earlier because the government can advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong at any point of time to revoke the emergency if there is no need for an emergency. And then Parliament can be convened, assuming that the Prime Minister doesn't want to convene Parliament, he can also ask the King to dissolve Parliament. But I think the challenge is that the three Malay parties, the three big Malay parties, UMNO, PAS, and Bersatu, are finding it very difficult to come to an agreement on two seats. In anticipation of our discussion or talk tonight, I actually did some number crunching. But I have to apologize because my numbers may be a bit rusty. They are
Sure.
a bit out of date, about 2 years. But I think so Philip can help me if I'm seen to be a bit out of touch. Now, there are 166 parliamentary seats in Peninsula and 56 parliament seats in Sabah and Sarawak. I think Philip can talk much more about Sabah and Sarawak.
Yes.
Out of the 166 parliamentary seats here, about 45 to 50 seats are non-Malay seats, or seats where the Indians and Chinese and others plus together are more than the Malays. I think about 120 seats are so-called Malay seats. Now, out of these 120 under the BN formula, UMNO would take almost all. Gerakan had one, Simpan Rangam, and I think MCA had a few like Tanjung Piai, Aitam, Tanjung Malim. These were seats that MCA would contest in and win. MIC too had one seat, two I know of offhand, which is Tapa and Cameron Highlands as well. Now, I think UMNO feels that they deserve anywhere upwards of 90 seats. Now, UMNO, of course, gave up some of the Malay seats in Peninsula because they had about 14, 15 seats in Sabah to compensate for that. So UMNO would always contest somewhere near the halfway mark, which is about 112. In the last two elections, they contested more than 112. So I think the challenge here now is how do you divvy up these Malay seats? And I think that in order to come to some form of agreement between the three Malay parties, there must be some understanding. So if UMNO is going to tell that they want an upwards of 80, 90 seats, then that only leaves about 40, 50 seats between Bersatu, right? If you add the 15 Sabah seats into the mix. So what is Bersatu and PAS going to do?
Yeah.
If Bersatu wants to retain the premiership, they have to be a party of standing and they have to have enough seats because it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
PAS, I think, is very content with some Kelantan, Terengganu, and some
Kedah.
of its seats in Kedah because those are its heartlands. So I don't think they want to come out of it. They maybe even be willing to give up some of their seats in northern Perak, I am told, in order to bring a deal between the three parties. So I think the column by Jocelyn Tan, she always has great insight, very much on point, that it is not going to be an easy road ahead. So I think the immediate challenge is to prevent three corner fights, because I think if there are three corner fights, and with the Malay vote split between BN and PN, then maybe the 20-25% that will vote for PH, coupled with significant non-Malay support, PH would end up being the largest grouping in parliament. But I think in a three-way fight, I was just doing some number crunching. It looks like as though no party will be able to form the government except if BN joins up with PN or BN joins up with PH. So it has to be two big groupings coming together. Some people have opined that in fact the Sabah formula, which is maybe those seats that you cannot agree upon, you have three-way fights. But I think in Peninsular Malaysia, it's not going to work very well because Bersatu simply does not have a ground operation anywhere close to UMNO.
Yeah.
In Sabah, it was easier because a lot of them migrated from UMNO to Bersatu. So it was simply the same party had cut into two. But I think besides PAS, which has very strong grassroots support among its 1 million members, and UMNO with its 3 million members, I think Bersatu finds it difficult to play catch up. So I think at the moment, the grassroots sentiment is definitely with UMNO, insofar as the support is concerned at the grassroots level. But I don't think UMNO has enough, and I think UMNO knows it, to put it over the magic mark of 112.
Okay, Philip, what's your take?
Yep.
Okay, for Muhyiddin, he wants to move on. He wants to have a seat arrangement with UMNO, etc. But UMNO at the moment, it looks like there's a school of thought, two school of thoughts in UMNO. One is the one that they want to go on their own together with BN in GE15. They're quite confident that they win. Plus for them is, if they gang up or they have a seat allocation with us and also Bersatu, the problem is like what Ivan said, they will have a smaller pie and therefore maybe they can't become the prime minister. They want to be the prime minister. So that's one school of thought. One school of thought is, let's go on our own and then we win as many seats as we can, and then we worry about who we combine with. They can combine with, if you look at the Perak incident, I think they wouldn't mind combining with, as long as they're prime minister, they combine with DAP. So that will be, for them, it's win as many seats. However, there's another school of thought in UMNO, and that's why I think the party can't move because of these two school of thought. The other one is that they need especially they need PAS in terms of winning seats. And then if they combine, especially with PAS and then a bit of Bersatu, this coalition will win the most seats and they will have their two-third majority. So that's the big fight in UMNO. I think that's why there's no, for example, the Janda Baik meeting on Friday, I think they didn't issue a statement, because when you listen to Insider, it's actually, it's how they spin it actually. Some says that, yes, UMNO has decided to cut ties with Bersatu once there's GE15, but then there are some people spinning saying that the president had vetoed it. So even in that meeting, or even when you listen to the story, the spins are coming up, and the spins are from these two school of thoughts. But it looks like, it depends on who wins, but it looks like UMNO will go on its own together with BN.
So, Philip, Ivan, if you look at what has been said or spin over the last 24 hours to 48 hours, the conclusion that we can deduct is that all the major players wants to conclude the meeting and their seat negotiations as soon as possible, because time is of the essence. Now, I want to go back to why elections needs to be called by August, or at least around that time. One is, of course, that the emergency ends by August, and that it'll be quite unlikely that the PM will extend it, because to extend the emergency will be actually quite political suicide, and nobody will want to buy that. Second thing is that to hold any elections, he will have to look at the COVID-19 situation. What is the numbers like? If we look at the numbers today, yesterday, and even tomorrow, we can conclude that it's still around 2,000 odd, and the numbers of people dying are still very high. So it will take at least 2 months before the COVID-19 situation comes down and stabilize. But of course, by April, between April and August, that's when they decide to carry out the vaccination for those who are 60 years and below, and above, sorry. So if you look at that, by that time, the numbers will stabilize and the vaccination program will have been successfully carried out, and people will feel pretty confident that, look, the government is doing the right thing, and that they have successfully tackled the COVID-19 pandemic, and they have provide the vaccination in a very stable situation. The government obviously needs this feel-good factor to come to place before an election can be called. Of course, let's not forget that the Sarawak state elections, by right, it ends in May, right? But it has until it has until August, right?
Yes.
That's the last date. So the last date will be August. Do you see that the Sarawak state election and the general election been called simultaneously?
Well, if I can just take you back a bit, Dato Sri, to 2017, I believe the SEA Games was in 2017. And just talking about feel-good factor, I think the thinking in Muhyiddin's camp is that, he's a wartime kind of prime minister to fight COVID. So if they roll out the vaccination successfully, by August, they can get maybe 60% of the population vaccinated.
Yeah.
Then that would be a massive feel-good factor. Because now it is vaccine politics, as some countries are calling it, because how well the governments can roll out and etc. So you look at the UK, Boris Johnson completely bungled the initial response to COVID, but as of yesterday, they have vaccinated close to 18 million out of their 67 million people. So now suddenly he's become very popular, and people are saying so. So I think that is initially the first thing. Secondly, I think it's the economy. Yeah, Bill Clinton said it right. It's the economy, stupid.
Yep.
So while COVID is one side of the coin, the other side is the economy. And I think Dato Sri Zahid said it in his interview yesterday with one of the online news portals that the economy is very important.
Yep.
So I think economic management, the trickling effect of the budget, etc., they are hoping that all of it can come together, or there'll be a confluence by August. Now, to give you a slight anecdote, in 2017, a lot of us told that Sri Najib, the PM at that time, to call for election after the SEA Games, because Malaysia had won the most gold medals. There was a feel-good factor. The 1MDB problem had not really reached its crescendo. But the opposition then, Harapan, had not come together as well as they did later on. And so that moment was missed. And that was disastrous. And in fact, I think many later on, complained, ruefully said, oh, we should have called for election at that time. So I think Muhyiddin is a very astute political operator.
Yeah.
He's a very intelligent person. He will know how to read the tea leaves, as they say. And I think that is why you're looking at an August window. Now, as for Sarawak, it's not 60 days, it's not 5 years from the last election, it's 5 years from when the Dun first set. And then they have 60 days from there at the very end. So I think in view of the Sarawak situation, I think it's quite conceivable that you could have simultaneous elections, though the Sarawak leaders don't want that, because they've always prided themselves of being a bit different from everyone and having their elections at a separate time. So Sarawak could possibly decide to go earlier as well, but all of that is subject to the emergency and the fact that Parliament and the state assemblies have been prorogued. indefinitely, that's going to be difficult. So I think yes, in a sense, the um, August timeline, August September, is quite likely to be the period for elections.
Philip, before I ask you to join in, I just need to say something before I forget. Okay. Now, of course, the price of oil has gone up steadily. We all know that the price of oil has always been volatile, but it has passed US 60 US dollars per barrel, and that will strengthen our currency. And the prices of commodities have also gone up, which will benefit the public and especially the small settlers. Okay, and that this will have an effect to our ringgit, which will become stronger. And also there'll be many effects to our purchasing power and to help other industries. And one more thing, of course, is that beside the price of oil, the 12 Malaysia plan will be rolled out soon. When he announces the 12 Malaysia plan, I think we can take it that it's almost like a manifesto for the government. There'll be almost be a mini manifesto, except this one will be really detailed. We can see that what the Prime Minister has been doing. He has been announcing one plan after another. There was this unity plan which he announced. And then we can see that over the coming months, the 12 Malaysia plan is one plan after another. You know that Muhyiddin is a veteran player. He knows the game very well. And it'll be one after another when he rolls this out. And all these will head towards the general election. Philip, yeah.
Okay, you all talk about the feel-good factor.
Yeah.
For me, it's maybe for some party, they benefit from the feel-bad factor.
Okay.
Okay, I just give you example. Just example. When you look into the Sabah election, most probably GRS won because of the feel-bad factor, which is the COVID-19. The voter turnout was around 66%, slightly around that time. And the reason is because Sabahans a bulk of Sabahans who were from KL, they didn't come down to vote because of COVID-19, number one. Number two, the price of flight was really expensive for them to go back. Okay, they really wanted to vote. And this is the Uba crowd. Okay, then even in Sabah itself, those who are living in Kota Kinabalu, they dare not go balik kampung to vote. It's because of COVID-19, plus they just didn't have confidence. They was very worried. So who benefits from this? When you look at the results, GRS, which is Perikatan Nasional, and BN plus PBS, they benefited because the bulk of their voters are living in the constituency. So that's why for me is the results of the Sabah election is also because of the voter turnout, number one, and it's also bad is what. So it's the same. When you go into Malaysia, you look at seats, like for example, those Johor seats, will Malaysians who are living in Singapore, will they balik kampung and vote? And then it's the same. Those Malaysians who are in Kuala Lumpur, will they go back and vote? And these are the voters who are maybe this the Uber crowd. So maybe the feel bad factor might be an advantage for certain parties.
In fact, Philip, the number of the Chinese voters who have been traditionally anti-establishment actually went down, right, in Sabah?
Yes, it went down. Even in Kota Kinabalu itself, although DAP won many of the seats, but when you look at the number that they won, it's low actually. One reason can be COVID. The other reason is also they were a bit fed up with politics because of the unfulfilled GE14 promises. So one of my friends did a study, the book will be coming out soon. They found out that the opposition votes went down. It's because of COVID and also because of the performance of PH. And then the results in the rural area, which is controlled by mostly BN and PN and PBS, the voter turnout was low and they won those seats.
But of course, Philip, there was a price to pay by having these state elections in Sabah. I mean that the fact that we are all now sitting here in our home and that we can't go out because of the high number of COVID-19 cases was because the election was held in Sabah. Now, would the government still want to risk this case by going for an election when the numbers have not stabilized? I really doubt so.
if I'm Zahid, I will argue this way. I just say I'm the UMNO president.
but
I'll argue.
I don't necessarily
Okay, wait.
think so.
Okay,
That
wait. My argument will be the vaccine. If I'm Zahid,
yeah, correct.
my
The
argument
vaccine, right?
is vaccine. Yeah, vaccine is out, so takut
Yeah, the
apa?
vaccine is out, so you can go for election now.
Okay.
Yes.
And even non-PhD
Ivan, you're
can
saying?
faham. No, I said
Yeah.
the vaccine and non-PhD also can faham.
Okay, now I mean that this discussion, of course, at this point is about the fear of having this anti-establishment voters. Okay, by the logic of Philip, it's a good time to call for election. Now, coming to that, do you think that the government will actually implement the change in law to have the 18-year-olds to vote? Because there's been complete silence since the amendments to the federal constitution to allow 18-year-olds to vote. Is it actually happening?
A problem with that, Chunwai, is okay. There is no parliament. I mean, parliament is not in session. Just say they lift up the emergency and then they call for an election soon after that. Parliament won't have time to be in session. So you cannot push for the laws that is required for the Undi 18 to be allowed to vote. So if you ask me, unless election is in November, December, or next year, there's a possibility. But if it's around August, based on your theory, no way. And then if it's around, just say, the one talk is it will be April, May, then Undi 18, I think Undi 18, I think they can stand as a candidate, but they can't vote.
Yeah, but I
Ivan,
think
what was your thought as a lawyer?
Yeah, well, I think legally Philip is right, but I think the constitutional amendment has been passed. So the major thing is to get the information of the 18-year-old voters, and then the issue of automatic registration, and also gazetting the voters list, because the voters list have to be displayed and then they have to be gazetted. So I think there is the natural legal impediment. But I think the legal impediment can be overcome. But I think they cannot overcome the political impediment, which is that the Bersatu youth themselves have come up to say that they don't want only 18, because I think they know that the those 18 may not naturally be their supporters. Those between 18 and 21, so they say, oh, must be matured about voting, etc. So I agree with Philip. I don't think only 18 is going to happen, at least for this election cycle.
So, Ivan, what is legally can be done, procedurally and legally, to frustrate this 18-year-olds from voting? What is the legal
I think the legal thing is that the legal approach or the law can be used, or can be it can be the EC. Sorry, the EC. All he has to do is just not implement it by saying that they don't have enough time.
I see.
Which is what I think they have pretty much said in a slightly coded way, that there are a lot of impediments, etc. To do so. Because Undi 18 is to come in with automatic registration. Two things have to work together.
I see.
Because if you allow 18-year-olds to vote, then you have to get the 18-year-olds to go to post office or to the election officers to be registered. That can take ample time if they are. If you take their growth age group, we are talking about 2 to 3 million people.
So there's this high possibility that the 18-year-olds will not be voting in this general election.
I think it's highly unlikely.
Okay, now I want to talk about this political scenario. It has been going around for weeks and weeks. I have friends in my chat group. When we talk about this possibility of UMNO and DAP working together, some of my friends in the chat group who are really hardcore DAP supporters, they would give donations to the party. They would take leave to campaign for the DAP. And if you ask them to climb on top of coconut trees and put up a DAP flag, they will do it. They are such hardcore supporters. When I told them that I've been hearing this talk of UMNO and DAP working together, they were just flabbergasted. They were really unhappy. They said, no, Chunwai, it's not going to happen. If Lim Kit Siang is there, it's not going to happen. It's just this Machai having this loose talk. But I say that, look, the Perak DAP, the chairman, would not have proceeded to carry out a negotiation with UMNO without the blessings of the top party leadership. And that the Perak chairman eventually actually admitted that he had the negotiations with UMNO and it failed because they wanted at least 3 exco seats, and UMNO said no. So that obviously that he was given the blessing to have these discussions. Now, talks, we all know that we have been hearing that both sides have been talking. Now, how would that go down with the DAP grassroots and the supporters? We have been hearing this. They have been attending charamas. DAP leaders demonizing what do you call it, UMNO leaders, calling them corrupt, racist, and then suddenly they are holding hands now. They're flirting with each other, talking about possible marriage that's coming. They can live together. What is your take on this?
Well, I think first, I said it, I think, in our last session that UMNO and DAP may be the formula for moving forward. And I think Perak is only one of the instances where they have tried to work together. Now, I think to break up your question, Datuk Sri, in a number of ways. First is the Kit Siang factor. Will he allow it? I think Kit Siang has changed from 2008. They have got a taste of power, especially now at the federal level between 2018 and 2020. It's for 22 months. I think they want to return to power. And one of the most plausible paths back to power is by working with UMNO, perhaps because they know Anwar can't get the numbers. Mahathir recently said, Anwar told DAP during the political high drama in February last year that he could get the Sabah Sarawak votes. That's why, the 92 votes went to Anwar instead of Mahathir. And Mahathir then only got 56 votes or 65 votes, was it? So I think they understand that Anwar has his limitations, that Anwar has tried, has failed. From 2008, he's been promising crossovers. It's not been happening. So I think a sense of realpolitik has seeped in on that angle. The second point is, how would DAP's traditional supporters react? Now, this is a question I ask many of my friends in chat groups I'm in, who generally, the company we keep tends to be very pro DAP naturally, because urban and etc. So even among these group, I think there are those who are very hardcore. They are Puritans. They say, no, we can never work with UMNO. But there is a realization that there has to be some cooperation between UMNO and DAP, because that would mean like Nixon going to China. Only he could normalize relations with Chairman Mao, no one else, because Nixon was an avowed anti-communist. So likewise, UMNO is the staunch Malay Muslim party, and DAP is a somewhat secular party, though they don't like to be called that. Coming together, then it would be the uniting of two opposites that could inject the stability that the country needs politically. So I think there is a real possibility of it happening, or at least it'll be a UMNO DAP plus plus with Sabah and Sarawak kind of formula. But I think that at the grassroots level, it will be very difficult for both the grassroots to come together, because their habits are different, their mannerisms are different, the language barrier. It's going to be a real challenge. But I think if DAP can work with PAS, there's no reason why they can't work with UMNO.
For the relationship to continue, do you think that it'll be much more smoother if the DAP dispose some of their personalities and some of the luggages that they're carrying now?
Yeah, I think it works for both sides. I think that is something that they must be brave enough to contemplate. But I have to let Philip chime in here.
Philip can't wait to jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think DAP will go into bed with UMNO, or UMNO will get into bed with DAP before GE15. That's why the voters will not punish them, or UMNO voters won't punish them. It's only after the G15 when you know the numbers. Example, just say UMNO has 50, DAP has 35, etc. And then when UMNO, just say UMNO has the most seats, UMNO will look around and see who has the numbers. So if it can combine with PKR, it can combine with Warisan, GPS, etc., it will form the government. And only if it needs DAP, then it will form the government. So I don't think the DAP voters or even the UMNO voters will have that decision that, UMNO and DAP is in an alliance or coalition before they vote. So
Yeah.
it's only after GE15, and then that's technically the prediction of this election. It's where coalition are not made before G15, but it's after G15 coalition will be made.
I agree with you, Philip. I think that it's not just the DAP. I think all the political parties will then decide their stand after the general election.
I
And
think
then,
there will be a massive realignment
yeah,
after the election.
yeah,
You know, because I think at this point of time, what's going to happen is this: you'll have BN, you'll have PN, and you'll have PH. And after the election, some of each may come together and form a new grouping. You know, sometimes like in Germany as well, they all go on their own, and then after election they come together. So I think that,
Yeah.
that is quite
Okay.
possible as well.
My free advice for these political parties is make sure your party is the president, no, is the prime minister. If not, you'll be bullied
So,
based on that.
Yeah.
so Philip, Ivan, you look at it that I mean, we are in a very messy political situation, and because the numbers are, everybody is in government because that they don't have enough numbers, and because they don't have enough numbers, that's why that you have this present predicament now. So we may have a situation where after the election, we may end up having the same situation all over again. Is that correct?
Yeah, I
It's
think that's
possible.
what everyone is very concerned about. That the concept of political loyalty has completely taken a beating. You know, previously you will not leave your party, you don't even criticize your party. I mean, I speak from personal experience. I never criticized my party or talked about party affairs outside. But after 2018, everyone wanted this democracy, this criticism. I too fell into the trap somewhat and got into trouble. So I think the need of party discipline, you know, and membership of a political party is an act of self-oppression. You oppress yourself because you have to hold on to, you have to put your personal views aside, and the collective wisdom of the party must prevail. So people like Anwar Musa and others are finding it hard, you know, suddenly why in this free market of ideas they are able to talk. So I think the political noises are not is not good, but I guess that's the price. Feel free to disagree with me. We have to pay for wanting to be more democratic.
So there's always a silver lining in everything. As you were saying, that suddenly Zahid and all the UMNO leaders are sounding like Democrats. They're talking about civil society. They're talking about the rule of law. They're talking about press freedom. Okay, which I find really unbelievable that the Malaysia Kini has been really hard on UMNO leaders, and suddenly we have UMNO leaders defending Malaysia Kini, which I never thought would happen. But because of politics, as you said, that they're competing for to be heard and to sound like Democrats, they have taken a different stand.
Yeah, exactly. I would say I found it most surprising. The Dato Sri Zahid talking about democracy and others because you know he didn't like these ideas very much when he was home minister, especially when he was criticized in parliament. You know when he brought in bills like POCA, Prevention of Crime Act, etc. But I think it is a good lesson. It is it's an opportunity for all of us to be a bit more adult in
Yeah.
how we approach politics. I speak for I mean I don't speak for Gerakan, but if I can say that now that we Gerakan finds itself in PN, it's back into the coalition framework. But at the same time, you know, I made it quite clear that the party still must retain its characteristics built up over the last 2 years, which is to be vocal, etc., and to be committed to the governance and democracy agenda as far as the country is concerned.
You know, Evan, Philip, please allow me to say this, okay, before you jump in.
Yes.
Okay, now, you know, we talk about the giving voices. Okay, we talk about the giving room for greater democracy. Okay, and that democracy, they say, is a very loud experience. Okay, now I think that Malaysians needs to really grow up too. We need to, the politicians needs to grow up, the stakeholders and even the voters really needs to grow up and to mature when they talk about democracy. I want to bring up the question of the comment section in the most of the media. Except for Malaysia Kini, which actually allows the free flow of these expressions, okay? The comments from the readers. Most of the media actually have had been in a very predicament situation because that freedom of expression does not give you the right to defame people, okay, to put people down, to bring up racial and racist comments. If you look at some of the comments that flows in social media, you find that some of the comments are really incredibly crazy, okay, incredibly seditious, okay, and that it may not be contempt of court, but it's really racist and seditious, okay, and that sometimes these are organized by cyber troopers, or it could be just a kid, a harmless kid, but when he becomes a cyber trooper, he becomes very aggressive, okay, and that there is no intellectual discourse, there's no civil discourse in the social media. They just want to put people down, or they call you okay, you're a running dog, you know, you're what they call it, you know, so they call you names, okay. And when you look at this comment section, there's actually no beef in it. There's nothing intellectual in it, but a lot of very poisonous stuff. So I think that I don't know what's your views on this, but the need for Malaysians to mature democratically, and we have not been able to grow up. Is it because that there have been what do you call it? There have been laws, you know, that prevents the people from speaking up.
I think it's not a Malaysian thing, Chunwai. If you look at even in US, when you look at the comment section by the, let's say, Trump supporters, it can be as racist as what we have. Even like when I follow football comment in the Guardian, well, you know, if you're a Liverpool fan, you'll be whacking, you'll be calling Manchester United scum United, etc., which I do. So,
and there is a malword. Scum is a malword.
Yeah, scum United is mild. So I think something that we can't. The problem is anonymity. These people are hiding behind something, and it's actually shock also. You know, you can whack whoever. You can whack the prime minister. You can whack the politician. Last time they were untouchable. Now you can touch them. So technically, for me, because of we have certain laws of like defamation, contempt of court, etc., I'm not a fan of comments. It's very dangerous, actually.
Well, you know, Dato Sri, when previously when I was in government, we had a big deep discussion on this, and some of us felt that the comment section, the social media is an avenue for people to lepas geram, and that is why you have not had any kind of clashes, physical clashes, because what you actually have is online clashes. So that's one way for people to blow off steam. But I think what has happened is that the political demonization, you know, running dogs, etc. This was DAP weaponized social media quite well through the Red Bean Army, etc. And anyone who did not agree with them was immediately castigated. And the comment section used to be so bad. I remember looking at some of the MCA Gerakan leaders' web pages. You know, if you did not have a strong heart, you would feel as though you're a really worthless human being. And, you know, these people, we are people with families. You know, sometimes the kids would go there and read and say, you know, is my father so bad, and etc., or my mother, you know, so bad. So I think the problem here is that what has happened with Malaysia Kini, the 5 comments that were made, till today they don't know who the 5 are. So as a responsible news outlet, they should know who the 5 are. They should have them registered with their email, etc., so they can be called to account. So today the entire media industry is paying the price because 5 jokers with no sense of self-responsibility made those remarks. And I think the judiciary also felt that, you know, enough is enough. A line has to be drawn somewhere. You cannot keep saying things with impunity, hiding under anonymity. In fact, if we look at it, this trend of holding online commentators accountable is not only a Malaysian thing. In the US, you could see how the Facebook had reacted fast, even banned Trump from Twitter and Facebook. So it goes on to show that it is not something unique to Malaysia. I mean, of course, Malaysia Kini made a good hue and cry about it. They got 500,000 in 4 hours and things like that. I think the larger message of personal responsibility, Dato' Sri, as you spoke about, seems to have been missed in this, because again, everything is politicized in this country.
You know, Ivan, we have been talking about the big parties. We've been talking about UMNO, Bersatu, PAS, you know, DAP. These are big parties, okay? Then what happens to parties like Pejuang and Muda? Do they even have a place in this crowded market?
I think where they have very strong personalities, if I think Dr. Mahathir stands in Langkawi, he'll most probably win. Mukris, I'm not too sure whether he will win in Jerlun. And Said Sadiq, I don't think he'll win in Muar on his own. I mean, that's what I hear. So I think the smaller parties will eventually be fizzled out, and they will come back together and join one of the bigger parties post-election. So I think Philip was right to say that the realignment, or rather the defining realignment of our political landscape, will be after the election, not before.
Ivan,
Okay. Chinwai.
sorry.
Sorry.
Philip, you got to excuse me because
Okay.
I'm a 60-year-old man who keeps on forgetting what I want to say, and if I don't say it, I'll forget.
Okay.
Okay, Philip, you know that we've been talking about people gearing up for elections, right? And that just want to share with our followers. I think in Ampang, there's already a billboard that's put up by Zuraida, right? And
Yeah, I
then
passed by yesterday. I saw it
Yes.
actually.
and then actually that you have potential candidates who have actually almost have spit it up that they are contesting. Okay, like Aflin Shocking. How do you pronounce it? Aflin Shockley.
Yeah. In
Okay.
Wangsa Maju.
Yeah, he has said that he's contesting. And my good friend Dato Hans Isaac is almost what do you call it, walking around like a potential yang berhormat, okay? And he has been carrying out projects under these Friends of Ampang, okay? And that he's likely to be a candidate. And from his mannerism and from the social media engagement, they are already out campaigning. So it's not as if that 5 months is very far away. Sorry, Philip, I need to say this before I forget it.
Okay. For me, is you mentioned Pejuang and Muda as as political party, and should we consider them? But the problem is they're not political parties.
Yes.
Yeah, they're
They're
not
not.
registered, right?
Yeah, they're not registered. So if election is called tomorrow or even in August, where is, I don't know. There's no Pejuang, there's no Muda. So who are they going to join? Or they're going to be what? With Warisan? They're going to be with Amanah? So technically, these two parties won't be contesting.
Philip, I want to talk about your favorite subject. You're a champion when it comes to clusters.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're talking about the clusters mahkamah. Okay, now I just also need your views as well as the legal views of Ivan. Can Najib contest the election? And if Zahid is what they call it sentenced, can he also contest the elections, although he still got avenues of appeal?
Okay, I let the lawyer
Well,
talk first.
I think just taking the simple legal position, Philip can give you the political position, is that they can, because they have got a stay of execution of the sentence, so they're not having to serve the jail time, neither they have to serve the fine. So I think so long as in previous cases as well, after a politician has been convicted, while still being a member of parliament, a sitting member of parliament, if they get a stay of execution on the sentence, then the speaker doesn't disqualify them. Only at the final stage, so only at the federal court stage. But of course, there has been some erratic decisions. For example, in Batu, where Tian Chow was disqualified, because of the issue of sentence, etc. So there are definitely some capricious decisions, and I think you could definitely see surprises on election day by the returning officers who will generally be loyal to the sitting government. So this is the first time AMNO is going into an election not being the sitting government. So I think you can expect a lot of these funny decisions coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ivan, you brought up I wanted to mention also the RO. I think RO is quite powerful. When you go back to the Tian Chua case, technically when he challenged the decision to bar him from contesting, he won. He's actually allowed. So it was the RO who banned him. So when you listen to lawyers, and lawyers have their own interpretation, some that is quoted by media, they say that Najib cannot contest in an election, but those are different. I mean, those are that's the interpretation of that lawyer. But then when I talk to people who are maybe pro Najib, they said no, he can contest. That's number one. Number two, I think the RO plays a very important role. If he goes for nomination day at Pekan and the RO accept it, then I think he'll be on the ballot box.
Yeah, I think if the RO rejects it, there could be a riot in Pekan.
Because Bosku is still very popular and is really the boss there.
I think yes,
Yeah.
in Pahang, I think
Yes,
not only
Pahang.
Pahang, I think across the board among the Malay ground. You know, Dato Sri, you said something quite interesting just now about palm oil price. You know, this palm oil minister, the current MP of Kuala Nerus, is the luckiest minister in the world. Because the first time palm oil has gone up to 4,000 per ton. Never before. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, FFB, you're looking at something like almost touching 1,000 a ton. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, and this is going to be a massive feel-good factor for the Felda areas.
Yeah.
But the other side of the coin also is that the reason why palm oil price is because supply is low, because there are no foreign workers to cut the fruit. So while they have a good price, they may not have fruits to sell.
Yeah.
So that's the other part of the problem which they need to deal with as well.
But also the increase in prices for crude oil and commodities is also because that around the world, manufacturers believe that the demand would pick up and that they'll be able to produce a lot of products, okay, and that's in anticipation of that scenario. And that these are the factors that we need to look into, because that if we are from the cluster Bangsa, and we're just talking about democratic values, it won't be enough, Okay, just the last questions before we wrap it up from Ivan and Philip. Would you want to stake your reputation on the line by giving your prediction of when do you think that the Prime Minister will actually call for his the election, the general election?
Okay, I answer that first. For me, I think even the Prime Minister do not know when he'll call for an election. The situation is very fluid. So I won't. I most probably he doesn't know. Maybe April and then May, and then the other one will be August. So those are the two dates that I am considering.
Well, I like to stick my neck out because I used to be a very cautious person in politics previously. So now that I can speak very freely, I can be a bit naughty as well. I feel that the Prime Minister will definitely do it between August and September, simply because you don't have to deal with the flooding, the year-end flooding in the East Coast states.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, you would have at least 50 to 60% of the population vaccinated, assuming KJ pulls it off. It looks like he's going to pull it off.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you're going to see an uptick in the economy, because the slowdown of last year was an artificial slowdown simply because we closed shop, so the economy couldn't move. So once the taps start flowing, the palm oil prices start trickling, the effect of the 4,000 ringgit per metric ton of CPO trickles down in the Felda areas, I think we are good. And also, I think by the time BN and PH and BN and others and all these political parties finally gets their act together, I think they need a few months. I think you're looking at August to September.
So you're going for August also, isn't it?
I'm looking at August because that you have so many reasons to do it. You have the National Day euphoria, you have the Malaysia Day celebration, and when you have done well, the mass vaccination, you have the economy recovering, then you have reasons to shout about it, to celebrate, and of course to go to the elections. So that's my take why it will be in August. Thank you very much, Ivan, Philip, for
thank you for having
spending time with us. We hope to come back again to talk about the politics in Malaysia. Thank you, Malaysia, for joining us. Please like, share, and follow us. Ivan, Philip, and RealChunWai. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.